Hey everybody, welcome to my Suburban Oasis. Thanks for joining me today. So we're going to do some random garden tasks. I've got a little bit of leaf mulch to put back into my garden, so I'm going to show you where I'm going to do that. And then we're also going to do some harvesting of compost. So it's a really fun time to see if there's any compost at the end of the year. So we'll take apart the compost bins and we'll pull out all of the big stuff and see what's at the bottom. Okay, so the area that I'm going to be mulching in is right here. And I have some of these wonderful leaves that my husband has chopped up for me and put in this cart. We really like to use this. It's just a wonderful organic way to help the beds over winter. And if you watched my last video, there's lots of good information in there about how you can do this and how it helps and benefits your bed. So we're just going to get this mulch out of this bin, and as I said, once we get done with this, we will then move on to doing the compost. And hopefully there will be something for us to harvest this year. Now I have not cut all of my perennials back yet. That's still a to-do on my list, but it has been so unusually warm that I'm just waiting for them to be ready. Right now I'm letting them absorb as much energy from the sun as they can by leaving their leaves on. It's been rather cold this week, so I think the timing is about right, where probably in a few days, maybe a week, I will need to do my cutting back of like the salvia. What I don't want to do is cut it back and then have it think that it's time to rebloom. That would not be good. This mulch job doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to get it around where you want it. Some of my beds I have mulched a lot, and over the years, or even over this summer, I have ended up having some of the mulch be dug into the soil. I didn't do it on purpose. It just kind of happens as you move things around or plant new plants. And some people might be concerned. I think there are people on the internet who think that it's bad to have mulch within your garden bed. If it's got dug into the soil, then it's, a no-no. It will steal nitrogen from your soil, etc. It's really not true. I mean, you don't want to till your soil and put a bunch of wood mulch into it, but if you get a little bit in there as you're digging and moving plants around, it's actually a good thing and can help aerate or add organic matter to your soil if it's sandy or if it's clay. Over time it will break down. You just don't want it to be too much. So that's why it's good to limit the amount of mulch that you put on top of your garden beds, because there's no chance that can even happen if you don't have enough mulch to do that. You want enough to keep the weeds out. Look at this aronia. Isn't this pretty? The fall color on it has really brightened up. And I took a small cutting of it and have it back here. So I'm hopeful that next year we'll have some really beautiful color in this corner. So in this bed you'll see I have some hostas, and I didn't pull them out before now because I didn't want to have to cut them off, but as they kind of die back, you can see how easy it is to pull those right off and not have to feel like you have to cut every single one of them. So it makes life a lot easier. It also makes it really simple now for me to put this leaf mulch over the top because I don't have to worry about where I'm putting it. There's also lots of bulbs that I planted in this bed, so they can benefit from this protection. It will really help regulate the soil temperature in the spring and avoid any random chances where the temperature gets hot and then it's not really time for it to get hot yet, and so things start to grow really bad and get hit by the freeze. So this can help to prevent the soil from warming up too quickly. Back here's another good example of a hosta I'm just gonna take right off. See how easy that comes up? I'm just grabbing at it. And that will all become compost. Okay, so here's what the beds look like now that they are all mulched in here for the winter. Okay, so the next step is going to be to take these apart, and I want to decide which one I'm going to start with, and I think I will go with this back one here. So we'll take this one apart and then we will look to see what we can harvest today. Hopefully we'll get something. Okay. So see, we compost pretty much everything in this house. And the easiest way for me to do this is to start by taking these locks off, which help to hold it together. They just slide right off. And then I will take the walls out. And here you can see the layering as the different layers break down and get to the bottom. Now, I'm not very particular about the things that I put into my compost bin, so my compost bin may look different than others because I tend to put things in that are a little larger than what others might, and pick them out later or put them back in and just let them keep going and cooking. So this is what it looks like, so now we're going to start to take it apart. So when I say take it apart, I just start getting the layers back. And this year I think I had a lot more green material than I had of brown material. So we'll see how much of it actually broke down, because that can cause things to kind of go a little anaerobic. So after I start to pull it apart like this, the first thing I'll do is begin to collect the big chunks out of it, and that will require me to go grab a pitchfork. All right, now that we're starting to get into what you can see is a lot more broken down material, I'm going to go get my pitchfork, and that will really help me sift through it. Okay, so the first thing that I do now is with this is I just shake it, and anything that stays on the pitchfork, and I'm just kind of shaking the compost out. Some people have compost sifters, I don't. And then I'll put the big stuff in here. All of the other stuff is stuff that I'm going to save and put in the garden. Now the reason why I use this method for me, because I find that the other method is too slow and I don't have the patience for it, and I also don't really care to wait as much time as might be necessary for the compost to break down 100%. So you'll see that there will be some small pieces of different things in my, what I call finished compost. But I find it works really well for me. So whatever method you find that works for you, I would encourage, because composting in and of itself is a really wonderful thing. It's a free resource. You get some exercise while you do it. And it really helps your garden grow. The other thing about it is it creates all of this healthy stuff that is itty bitty teeny tiny that you can't even see, that will go back into your soil. And when it does that, it helps to protect your garden from pests and disease. If you want to look up a really interesting person with some great information on how beneficial compost and microorganisms are to creating a healthy environment for plants, check out Dr. Elaine Ingham. She is, I think she's a microbiologist. Anyways, her material is pretty cool. There's lots of stuff out there on YouTube for free that you can watch. She's done some amazing projects abroad. Where she's teaching people to use compost tea. Because of climate change, it's become more difficult in areas to keep up with all of the watering and feeding of plants with the way that commercial farmers have been doing things for the last, 30 or 40 years, 50 years, whatever it is, since they began using pesticides and chemical treatments. She's got some great research about how good it is and how well it works. So this is what I consider to be as finished as I want. It's got little chunks and pieces of things in it still. You'll see perlite from some of the stuff that, is from my potted plants that I've thrown in here as well. Just little pieces of stuff. But that's actually really fine for me. The only time that you really need it to be all the way broken down is if you're planning to use compost to grow seedlings, and then you either want it to be all the way broken down or you want to sift out some of the big pieces. That way you make sure that they all get contact with the soil really good. So now I'm just going to scoop this out and put it in this cart. So this is kind of what I call my 2-cart method of harvesting compost. And if I see any big chunks of anything at this point, I will pull it out as well. Everything in here has been in here for at least a year. I typically leave some of the compost in the bottom of the bin because it is so full of such wonderful stuff that it gets the rest of the compost started, and you'll see we'll put the big stuff right back into the container to continue to break down. I also find that having some big pieces, and when I say big, I mean like the size of a pencil, like some of those, they help to keep the compost a little bit more aerated. They let some air in when it might not otherwise be there. Also, there'll be plenty of people who will tell you don't put any soil into your compost pile. But I do if it's really heavy clay. It will, and I break it up before I put it in, and it just helps to mix it up. And then when I put this back into the garden, it's full of their wonderful minerals that regular soil has, and then it's full of all of the micronutrients and small biological life that compost has. So you get the best of both worlds. That's how I do it. Everybody has their own way, and I say find what works for you and what seems successful and is good in your climate. I actually have a lot more compost in here than I thought I would. See, there's even an egg in here that hasn't broken down yet. I'm pretty excited about this harvest. It's a good one. Sometimes I'll find little pieces of plant tags or something like that that I missed. So it's always good to pay attention to what's coming out. All right, I think some of the rest of it has some bigger pieces in it, so I'm going to leave the rest for now. And I'm going to put the bin back together after I scoop it back in. Okay, so we're just going to get these last pieces on, and then we'll fill the bin back up with the raw material. And it will actually be more aerated as a result of this. And yes, even the Domino's boxes go in there. Domino's boxes, egg cartons. I love these compost bins. I've got a compost tumbler. That's what I started with. I hated it. I got a compost bin. I loved it. So I got another one. I don't turn it. I don't add anything to it to try to make it go faster. I do, however, sometimes have to add some water to it to keep it moist. So that's about it. I'm going to finish filling this bin up, and I hope you enjoyed this video, learned a little something today, and maybe are a little bit excited about doing some composting on your own. Let me know what tips and tricks you use to do good composting in your yard and how you use it in your garden. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time. Bye!